We're moving on to this story about Max Blumenthal and Tulsi Gabbard. You know, something happened to Tulsi a couple years ago. You know, at one point, she was a part of the Hillary Clinton, type or I guess side of the Democratic Party. So she was more aligned with that. And actually, like Hillary Clinton was kind of, counting on her endorsement or thinking that she would endorse. She decided to endorse Bernie Sanders for 2016 instead. And that's when the Democratic Party had pretty much washed their hands of Tulsi Gabbard. Like the DNC said, oh, you did a no. You went against the queen. They consider Hillary to be a queen. So from that point on, she went on to run for president in 2020, still through the Democratic Party. But she had a pretty decent platform from what I remember. I know like Nico House, was a part of Tulsi Gabbard's campaign in 2020. He, was very, positive about Tulsi Gabbard. She was calling out regime change wars. Like she had, I think she had something similar to Medicare for All, if I remember correctly. But anyway, she seemed more principled then, right? We all remember the epic moment when she called out Kamala Harris during the Democratic primary debate, and she called out Kamala Harris's record, which made it very clear to me a lot of people in the US were not aware of that until that moment happened on the debate stage, right? But then something happened. Like over the past 2 years, Tulsi just, I don't even want to say that she's moved to the right. I don't know what she's doing. I know she left the Democratic Party, which I applauded that. I think that was a good thing. But now it seems like Tulsi is starting to have some of those same talking points that the Hillary Clintons had, right? So Tulsi basically tried to, I guess, make a little bit of a beef here with journalists, right? So let me show you what she said. Tulsi said, instead of reporting the facts, reporters are acting as propagandists, pushing a particular viewpoint. Because of this propaganda, media, and lack of education, most people don't know what Islamism is or the connection between Hamas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, IRGC, how they differ, and what their goals are. So I'm just going to highlight this part right here, and I'll show you the video. ISIS and Al-Qaeda, I would say the US government actually are the reason why those groups in particular came to be by removing Saddam Hussein. Talked about that earlier with Scott Ritter. So there's that. There is that. So listen to this video here. Oh, boy. Oh, Tulsi, honey, people did not like this.
When you listen to that Sky News reporter and the question that she asked, she's emblematic of this broader issue we're seeing with many so-called reporters who aren't just reporting facts, but instead essentially doing Hamas's work for them. Mm-hmm. Hamas's goal is to turn the world against Israel in order to reach their objective goal and the goal of other Islamist groups and countries, frankly, which is wipe Israel off the face of the earth. They're succeeding in doing that by using these reporters who have become their propagandists. Yeah. And those who are naturally compassionate by nature are hearing this and hearing things that are not representative of the truth and falling for it and turning against Israel and not actually seeing the truth of how Islamist and terrorist groups like Hamas, as you know, ISIS and Al-Qaeda and others, they have always used civilians as human shields. They have always hidden behind them for this exact reason, because they know that the news media, many of them, will throw this propaganda out there without telling the full story about their barbaric tactics and their willingness to sacrifice women and children, innocent civilians, to achieve their objective. And so people need to understand the whole truth on this whole war.
So first and foremost, Tulsi is talking about herself, not telling the whole truth. She's not telling the whole truth. She's not willing to call out what Israel, the state of Israel, has done, and more particularly under Netanyahu, what they have done to the Palestinian people. Don't want to talk about the occupation. She is sitting there. She is repeating mainstream media talking points and lies. I remember a time when Tulsi Gabbard actually applauded independent media, right? Like, so she has come on to independent media before. now it's just like she's become very much a part of this corporate media bubble to the point where she is parroting their same talking points. And the moment she were to backtrack or she were to switch that narrative and tell the other side of the story, I don't think you'll see her sitting on Fox News. And I don't want to hear that she doesn't know better. Tulsi Gabbard knows exactly what she is doing. That's what people have to understand. She just kind of moves with the moment. She moves with what suits her career. So Max Blumenthal didn't like what Tulsi had to say, so he tweeted this. I want to show you this as well. He said, Tulsi, I've reported from inside Gaza and across the region. I have done a documentary and 3 books about these issues. Please accept my invite to discuss political Islam at the Grayzone News, along with your sudden support for the most radically ethno-supremacist government in Israel's history. You know me. Your staff knows me. And yet, you've never accepted an interview request. I think now is the time to demonstrate what you know before our respective audiences. Don't bow out like Robert Kennedy Jr. did. And so this is basically Max challenging Tulsi to a discussion, like, come on and have the discussion, right? And again, I just want to say it one more time. Tulsi Gabbard has appeared on independent media before. I don't want you guys to think that she's one of those politicians that only goes on the mainstream media. No, she has come on to independent media. But she is doing something similar to what RFK is doing. You talk about telling the truth and the full story, Tulsi Gabbard, but you yourself are not willing to have that conversation with people who are going to give you the other side of the perspective, because you know you would lose that gig at Fox News if you would bring someone like Max on to discuss. Max Blumenthal has been on Fox News before. He's been on Tucker Carlson's show. I know Tucker's not there no more, but he's been on Tucker Carlson's show. So it is very odd to me that someone who was a political candidate, who knows how to debate, would not be willing to have a discussion to hear this other side of the story. And don't think that she doesn't know the other side. She does. She is playing along with this, just like RFK Jr. is playing along with it. We'll get to him in a minute. So Max was not trying to hear it. So now we all know that the Grayzone has sent invites to Tulsi Gabbard to have this discussion. Now, I want to show you something this guy said. Tyler Pop. I don't recall Tulsi being in Epstein's black book. What do they have on her that made her suddenly so pro-war and pro-genocide? Now, I have said before that Tulsi Gabbard was not anti-war. In fact, I said this on The Hill Rising, and people were like, Sabby, you're wrong. You're wrong. Tulsi is anti-war. I said, okay, we'll see. After October 7th, Tulsi tweets out that we need to send weapons to Israel so that they can fight and defeat Hamas. And people are like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Tulsi is saying she wants them to fight. I told you she wasn't anti-war. She said she didn't approve of regime change wars, but she wasn't anti-war. Now, I'm pretty sure Tulsi Gabbard is not going to accept that invitation. Again, like I said, I think this is all about her making career moves. I think that's why she's on Fox News. She's trying to look out for her future and her career. I don't think she's going to go into the gray zone, just like RFK Jr. is not going onto the gray zone. But I want to go back for a second and show you when she came onto Fox News to discuss that she was leaving the Democratic Party. Again, I applauded her for leaving the Democratic Party. But it is very apparent to me that she's not willing to become anti-establishment. And if you were to compare this, the things that she's saying now to her 2020 campaign, this is like a completely different person. Listen to this. Now, this is when Tucker was still on Fox News.
Tulsi Gabbard joins us tonight, and we're happy that she is. Tulsi Gabbard, thank you so much for coming on tonight. That was quite a statement. I'm listening to this, and I'm thinking, We have Republicans on the show from time to time. They don't put it as clearly and bravely as you do. So how do you feel? I mean, you've been in this party a long time. You were its future. You left. I mean, this has got to be kind of a fraught moment for you.
Tucker, as you know, I've always been an independent-minded person, a Democrat, yes, but an independent Democrat. And my loyalties are very clear. I love our country. And I took an oath, both as a service member, as a soldier, as well as a member of Congress, to support and defend the Constitution.
Let's talk about the loyalty piece. Tulsi Gabbard says her loyalties are very clear. Were they though? Because I remember her loyalty was, with Bernie Sanders in 2020 when she was no longer a part of the campaign, no longer part of the 2020 election. Were they loyal? Didn't she flip on Bernie and support Joe Biden? I remember when all the other candidates were coming out in support of Joe Biden, and I said, Tulsi won't do it. Tulsi's going to support Bernie Sanders just like she did in 2016. No, she flipped and supported Joe Biden, and I believe she did that. I feel like that was her way of trying to get back into the good graces of the DNC. I really do believe that. But that didn't work out for her, so she had to find another way to pivot. How can I stay in this political space? DNC won't take me back because I went against Hillary, but I endorsed Biden.
And that's an oath that I take extremely seriously. And so when you look at this party, the today's Democratic Party, it's controlled by fanatical ideologues who hate freedom. They despise the Constitution. They actively find ways to undermine our God-given rights enshrined in the Constitution, like freedom of speech. If you say something and I say something that they don't like, instead of saying, you know what, agree to disagree, live and let live in the traditional liberalist kind of way, no, that's not good enough. They will do all that they can to destroy you, silence you, smear you, work with big tech, work with corporate media to actively destroy anyone who dares to even question their agenda.
Now, I wanted to play this video because one of the things that she mentioned was free speech. She was really for free speech then, right? She talked about God and country, Constitution. Doesn't seem to be that much for free speech when you start to talk about Palestinians. Now, all of a sudden, it's, oh, no, you shouldn't be saying these things. See how people were able to just flip? Blowing where the wind, just blowing with the wind. That's what she does, just blowing with the wind. So you can see the change. She mentions God and country. And when I hear people say this, I always have to ask, which God are you referring to? Which one? Because people have different gods. Religion is a belief. It's not a fact. You don't know this as a fact. It is a belief. So which God, which one are we referring to? Think about that.
They are against freedom of religion. They are hostile towards people of faith, people who have their own spiritual practice, especially Christians, finding ways to be vindictive, to discriminate, to punish people who happen to exercise that freedom of religion. The list goes on, but the foundation of freedom is really what was at the heart of my making this decision, that I cannot be a member of a party that is against freedom and actively trying to undermine it.
I think they pushed her out. And I agree with some of the criticisms that she had with the Democratic Party. I'm not a part of the Democratic Party. I'm a registered independent. So I agree with some of the criticisms that she's had about the Democratic Party and how they tried to silence people, especially in reference to the Twitter files. But I had a sneaky suspicion that I think her endorsing Joe Biden was her way of trying to get back in the good graces of the DNC and the Democratic Party to see if she still had a place there. And I think they did not want her back because she didn't follow the status quo. They'll do you like that. They won't let you come back in, So that's something I want you to think about when you think about some of the moves that Tulsi has made within the past 2 years.
Well, it was inspiring to hear that, but also disappointing. I mean, I feel like printing out your words and asking every Republican candidate who comes on this show to read them. And if you can't read them, I'm not voting for you. Right? I mean, why is it so hard to say out loud? First of all, the people who are always talking about racism are committing it. Why is that so hard for people to acknowledge? It's so obvious.
It speaks to the whole environment of fear that those in power, these elitists in power, have fomented, to where people are afraid to speak the truth. They're afraid to exercise their right to free speech because, hey, you might lose your job, you might be canceled, you might be trashed, and God forbid in Washington, you might not be invited to the cool kids parties. You might not be as popular. And this is really what it comes down to, is rather.
And that's what happened to Tulsi Gabbard. She was no longer invited to the cool kids party. That's what happened to her. But if you listen to what she's saying, this goes back to what Max Blumenthal said. If you really feel that way about free speech, Tulsi, if you really feel that way about people should be able to say what they want to say, why not sit down and have that conversation with the Grayzone? I said the same thing with RFK. You don't have to agree with everything that, Max is going to say to you or whatever, but why not even be willing to sit down and entertain the conversation?
Than taking a stand for peace, for prosperity, security, and freedom of the American people, we have too many people in Washington who are warmongers, subservient to the military-industrial complex, and continuing to put their own selfish interests or the interests of their donors first, with no mind for the cost and consequence that their decisions have on the American people. This is exactly what we're seeing right now with President Biden and leaders in Congress whose decisions are actively pushing us to the brink of a nuclear holocaust, of which they may have their bunkers where they'll be safe, but we, the American people, will have no shelter, no place to go, no place to hide, and face the consequences that could destroy all of humanity and the world as we know it.
And I agree with her about the military-industrial complex. But the thing is, at the same time, this is when she left the Democratic Party, but now she's saying, let's give weapons to Israel. It's just blowing with the wind.
You were the first person I heard say that back in February when this all started. I believed you.
Why I ran for president.
Well, it turns out you were absolutely right. Really quick, since you did serve for so many years in the Congress, in the party you just left, you know everybody, of course. Has anyone called you today, your former colleagues, Democrats, to say anything to you?
One got in touch with me and sent me a text message with 3 thumbs up.
I would love to know who that is, but I'm glad you're influencing people. Tulsi Gabbard, I'm not going to ask you what you're doing next. We will all watch, but I hope you'll come back on the show soon. Thank you.
And we all see what she decided to do next. So there's that. So I just wanted to show you that so that you can see how much she's changed, even just from that discussion. This took place 1 year ago. 1 year ago was that video. Very interesting. Very interesting. Tulsi Gabbard, I think you should have that conversation on the Grayzone. I think that would be a very interesting discussion.